Today we're talking with Quentin Long, who is a foremost authority in the Australian travel industry and is the founder or the co-founder, the founder or co-founder? Founder?
Co-founder.
Co-founder of Australian,
co-founder. Yep.
the co-founder of Australian Traveller magazine, which also includes International Traveller.
Yep.
How did I go?
Pretty good. Usually we say Australian Traveller Media. We have that great brand problem where we launched the company under the name of the brand, and then we added another brand, and we still haven't changed the company name, although I desperately want to.
Yeah.
Around to it. So. Yeah.
And you started this quite a while ago, is that right?
15 years ago, based on an experience of coming home from working. From the age of 14, Alex, all I wanted to do was get the hell off this island. And, I backpacked around the world when I was 18. I celebrated my 19th birthday drinking Long Island iced teas in the pub opposite Madison Square Garden illegally because I wasn't 21. And then, and then I did my university degree, and then all I wanted to do was go overseas. And I went to Singapore and worked there for 18 months. And then I went to London, worked there for 2.5 years. And I came back to Australia. I had an English girlfriend, and I said, "Oh, you've come to live in Australia. I should show you some of this country." And we went to Broome. And if you've ever been to Broome, you fly over this thing called Roebuck Bay. And I was looking down going, man, this is amazing. It says beautiful Maldivian blue water and that incredible what they call pin down or red soil of Australia. I was like, why haven't I seen this before? All I want to do is get the hell off this island, and I haven't seen my own country. And that's where Australian Traveller was born. Registered the URL when I got home from that holiday. Me and my business partner did the classic get drunk for 6 months saying, why is this a bad idea? We're not the smartest guys in the room. And someone must have thought of this, but we could never find a reason why not to do it. And so we sold our houses, pushed all in, and launched the company on January 1st, 2005.
Wow. Well, congrats. It's still going. And I'm sure as a publisher, that's probably going to be quite a challenge. And also nowadays with the travel industry, I think that's a whole challenge as well. But I think the first thing I heard about you from Catherine, right, was that he's a character. He's got very strong opinions, and I think I saw an interview on Channel 7 with you, and
Channel 9,
Channel 9. I can attest to that. But where do you want to start with this thing? Because you've got so many. Because you have a lot of experience in quite a vast range of things that I think people are going to be interested in, from travel, publishing, to this whole challenge that we find ourselves in today. So where do you want to start? Because I have ideas. I can start it, but if you want to have an area which you want to go down first.
Well, mate, it's your show. You get to say what you like. And
let's start with the travel industry. Let's start with the travel industry, right? Because, since COVID-19 hit, it is the biggest, it's hurt the most. It's hurt the most. It seems to be, and this is from the outsider's perspective, that overnight the travel industry is just shut down.
Yes.
Basically, in terms of no one's traveling. Everyone's in lockdown, at least in Western cultures. Everyone's in lockdown. Now, that means that cruise ships are docked and kind of hotels are empty. And what is the landscape actually look like right now, in that travel industry?
Yeah, it looks like a post-apocalyptic world. The best stat I can give you, Alex, is that Flight Centre is operating on less than 3% of turnover. 3%. 3%. That's good. We as a business have been pretty much resigned to the fact that for the final quarter of the financial year, we will not raise another invoice. And that's what our planning was. And so then we had to cash flow it from that, and also look at our receivables and estimate really what that's going to look like, and then work from that ground zero and move from there. So the travel industry is in a pretty it's in hiatus. It's just not there. It doesn't operate. Airlines are grounded. Airlines run aviation. Aviation basically runs tourism to a large degree. And so when aviation closes down, you have absolutely nowhere to go. The recovery is really interesting, and everyone's spending a lot of time trying to think about recovery and when and how and what. I would say out of this, I've found that there's a lot of tone deaf responses to this crisis that I've been really surprised at. And I think a lot of press has started to pick up on how the messaging's all the same, all that sort of stuff. I think there was too many people who wanted to jump on the we're in it together, we feel you, all that sort of stuff, and really didn't have the humanity behind that message.
Right.
The first thing that I did was email almost all of our clients saying, are you okay? Like, no, I'm not talking about your business, I'm talking about you.
Mm-hmm.
And if this is crap, this sucks, but are you okay? If you want to have a chat, talk about some ideas, talk about what recovery could possibly look like, I'm here to chat. I'm not as arrogant to think that you need me, but if you need to reach out, let's have a chat. I got really interesting responses from around the world.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I had conferences like this, you know, Zoom meetings with people in Kuala Lumpur, Singapore, America, who just said, yeah, I'd love to see what's going on with you. Let's have a chat. I want to know what's going on in Australia or what's going on and have a chat. So that was, I think, the best thing. But as a brand, I think we need to stay true to who we are, but understand that people are losing jobs. People are really at some very difficult places, and we had a long conversation. And sorry, Alex, if I'm rabbiting on, but
no, this is what it's about.
We had a long conversation internally, and I felt very strongly that we should not be directive. Don't tell me what to do. Don't tell me to keep dreaming. And look, a lot of people have done this, so I'm not, but we thought it was inappropriate. I've just lost my job. My husband may have lost his job. My wife may have lost her job. Don't tell me to keep dreaming. I'm dealing with some really severe shit. So we've decided to do a much more invitational, if you're okay, and if you want a distraction from this, we're here to help. If travel is the light at the end of the tunnel for you, maybe we can help. And so
that tone difference makes like such a big difference, right? In terms of the message, how it comes across.
We talk a lot, or I talk a lot about how great content is a feather touch. You know, remember the old days when we used to tune a radio and you'd have that static, and then you'd have that little last, like half a millimeter before it came in and it was crystal clear. Great content is that, and great editors do that, and you don't know what they've done to get it from static to crystal clear, but they've done it. But I really think too many people have gone with a very unsympathetic, unhumanistic approach to their marketing.
And I can confirm that's across basically all the industries, right? Like I've received emails from all my credit cards or my bank saying we're here to help. Lower my interest rate. Yeah. That's good. I actually got a call from one of them saying, hey, look, I'm just calling you now to basically to halve the interest rate. I'm like, oh wow, it's great. I'm so busy. I could have asked, but they actually called. That was a good experience, right? I'm like, cool. Now they've got that bond with me now where they're actually helping, you know? Yeah. Lots of others we're here to help, speak to us if you need anything. And there's a massive process behind it and so on. So look, I do hear you. I think the travel industry is really interesting because it's literally overnight just stopped, you know, like everything's just had to stop. And because you're not allowed to travel for the first time, you know? And so what's happening with all the hotels that are empty, with all the cruise liners that are, you know, basically like docked, with all the supporting travel agents, you know, this is the hibernation that they speak about. This is kind of the one industry that actually has to hibernate and actually can't really sell any. Well, it can sell. Like I saw a cruise offering 3-for-1 tickets, right? Like where you pay for one, you get three. Yeah. You get three spots on the cruise. So it does feel like there you could promote some pretty effective deals right now to the people that are interested. Like, is that what's happening right now? Or, you know, because I don't have insight, because all our clients kind of stopped because they had no revenue. So there's no real conversations behind kind of how we can help them. We had a couple.
And what does recovery look like? So there's been a few case studies out there. One is, I think, really interesting, which is what the Bali hotels did. Yeah. And they went out and they released $100 bonds. And so what they said was, you buy a bond at this hotel for $100, and in 60 days, that bond will mature, and that will be worth $150. And so they're basically effectively giving you a 50% markup on your money. And that was to get cash flow in to the business right then and there. Interesting concept. Really appeals only to the existing customer base because they have an existing relationship and there's not as much perceived risk. The whole industry now really is looking at risk and risk mitigation, and how do we give people a surety around investing. But unfortunately, they shot themselves in the foot. And Intrepid, unfortunately, great Australian company, great Australian brand, absolutely did it the wrong way. They went out with an offer saying, if you invest in this tour, your money, you will give you your money back if it doesn't happen or if you want to cancel. They then changed the terms and conditions retrospectively, which is actually against the ACCC rules, and the ACCC's come out. And so there's been a lot of that kind of missed goals that have created more problems, as understandably things got worse and they ended up with that situation. Most major travel businesses are using this opportunity to accelerate, and I'm sure, Alex, you're the same, and we are definitely the same, to accelerate all their investments in things that they want to do to improve their business. They can now bring them forward because they have this opportunity to do so. So things like refurbishment of ships, refurbishment of aircraft, whatever, digital assets, there is so much cleaning up in the digital world going on. You know, we are absolutely determined to be, have an incredible user experience, and we've got 90-day sprints. Next 90 days, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to be a better business. This is how we're going to have a better product. And this is how we're going to have a better user experience in 90 days. And that's what we're focused on. So that by the time that this hibernation is over, we hope to be something that people go, oh, that brand experience was amazing. Why didn't I do that before? And then go from there. But I think largely that's what the travel industry is doing if they can.
So from the consumer's perspective, I think a question that they might have is, if I spend money now on a deal, how do I know the company's going to be around to honor that deal? Because if they go into administration, then I'm a creditor at the bottom of the list, basically, and probably not going to get much out of it, right? It's unsecured creditors. How do they get past that? Like, what's like a way that they can kind of instill trust into the market, right? Because I think that's that Intrepid example that I just heard a second ago. They probably changed it because things are probably going to cancel and they need cash flow and something like that, right? And so what can they do to really establish trust in this respect? Yeah.
I think the really interesting thing is, you know, Ritson goes on about market through a downturn, blah, 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 blah. That's all very well and good if you are a large organization that has the ability to market at a very different level than to want an immediate return. Most travel businesses don't have that. They're faced with this awful situation where they don't have money to be able to generate money. They need that to generate money. So I'm not being very clear. So let me start again. The problem is they don't have the ability to market long term without having a return. So what do? Well, they maintain their own channels in an authentic way. So that's social and email. And they do that without being tone deaf, and they do that with an understanding and a sympathetic and humanistic way. they tell good stories and they try to find good stories. There's a great story, and I cannot believe I haven't been able to get it up yet. Fitzroy Island.
Okay.
Fitzroy Island off the Queensland coast up north. Up north has been absolutely decimated by COVID. It's a long story. But what they've done is they've said to their employees, you can come and be in lockdown with us on the island. Bring your family, bring you. What better place to be in lockdown? You're not we've got to furlough you. We've got to stand you down. But come over to the island. In the morning, do 3 hours of maintenance, help us keep upkeep. Then we'll have lunch. And then in the afternoon, do some upskilling, do some training, do whatever you like. Come over with your family. 50 people are on that island in lockdown. They don't have to pay for board. They don't have to pay for accommodation. They're not getting a salary, but they wouldn't have anyway. And all they have to do is help upkeep the resort, and then they get to upskill themselves. It's of all the ISO situations,
yeah,
I'll take that. Tropical island up north, fantastic. I get to upskill and I don't have to do too much. And my family gets looked after. So yep. I think that's a smart response. And those stories are the ones we're looking for. They're the stories that people will resonate with about how the big thing I think is community, safety, and risk. Community, so, people want to feel community safe. Safety, obviously, and then risk. Am I interviewing risk? Sorry, mate, go on.
No, good. No, sorry to cut you off. When does it open again? Like, is it when it gets to stage 2? Is it stage 1? Like, what is, at what stage of restrictions can hotels open again? You know?
They're open
because
now.
At least, because are they open now?
Yeah. But, so they've been accommodating people in quarantine a lot.
Yeah,
and
saw that.
Yeah, and they've been accommodating. So it depends who you are, right? So if you're a city hotel, you can be open and it's okay. But you do have situations where the police are coming around and making sure that the guests in your hotel are there for essential reasons. And so that's the.
So you can only do it for essential reasons. When can you do it for non-essential reasons? Because I want to go on a bit of a kind of holiday from the lockdown, right? And get some room service. You know what I mean? Like a staycation if you must.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that. So one of the first questions all the travel marketers asked was, when do I go back in the market? And so we set up a product for them, which I've called COVIDtelligence. We're really smart at naming our products, which tracks consumer travel sentiment. And we're using analytics, on-site analytics and on-site polls to collect that data by asking questions, but also analysing behaviour. And so I've got a great graph that shows you the bottom of the market in terms of confidence in booking travel was probably the week of the 29th of March.
Yep.
And we've slowly seen it tick up. We expect, and no one knows, we expect that by July, people will start to travel, be able to travel again. The recovery will be in 3 phases. The first one is what we call intrastate, and that'll be people driving 3 hours within from their homes, and then it'll be interstate, and that's all aviation dependent. When the flights come back, then you see people start to travel again, and the stimulation of that will probably be very retail led, and I think that's both good and bad. And you've got to be working out when to start seeding that market with a brand story and an engagement story that you can then follow up with retail. I think too many people are going to go straight to retail, and that will be problematic for their yield. And the smart people are going to start with their engagement strategy before they start with their retail strategy. And that timing, we're helping people work out.
Just quickly, for people who are watching, how do they get access to that COVIDtelligence?
Yeah, email me and I'll send them the first report. It's a weekly report that we send to clients.
What's your email, just so they know?
qlong@australiantraveller.com. And you can get that report. And so the other interesting thing is international travel and when that will happen.
Let's start with the domestic side of things first, because let's just unpack that quickly. So in your opinion,
June 25.
We'll open up first
June 25. We will be launching a massive campaign with Tourism Australia that will be about stimulating demand and getting people into that engagement phase and then into the retail phase. And the engagement phase is, here's all these cool things. You can't go overseas. Let's put that time and energy into those great things you always wanted to do in Australia. Let's do them now. If you've ever had stuff to do on your bucket list in Australia, this is the year to do it.
It's funny because of myself and everyone I know, 2020 was the travel in Australia year.
Yeah.
But then it got stopped, right? And so now that's only going to be stronger because, as far as I understand it, international travel is going to be closed until at least the end of the year, which is good like kind of like, which is comparatively good for the Australian travel industry, right?
Yeah.
But just to confirm, it will start within the same area within, say, for example, 3 hours of basically the places that people live. And then it will be dependent on like if you can fly, right?
That's right. Aviation.
I do believe personally, like it, and this is everyone I've been speaking with, in the first month, like if you, I mean, in terms of lockdown, like if you had asked people, like, are you going to travel? It'd be like, hell no, no way, blah, blah, blah. Second month of lockdown, everyone's stir crazy. Like I know personally that, you know, like in the shops and the coffee shops and all that, like people, they're social distancing, but there's a lot of people social distancing right now. And I think people are kind of over being stuck at home. Yeah. And as soon as, you know, we heard that the government, like in this state, on Friday will allow 2 people to visit somebody else, it's like everything opened up already. It's like, oh, we're all better, right? And so, like, I've got some opinions about that. But from a travel perspective, I think it's going to be strong immediately out of the gate, like where people are going to try to find the deals, the specials, because I know that everything's going to be on special. So I'm going to try to book it in. And if I'm like an example of a small kind of like sub-segment of society, enough hotels are going to be booked up like pretty quickly.
So the domestic recovery in that, it will be a V, not a U.
It'll just be straight back up. Yeah.
It's very sharp. But it is, you know, tourism's like real estate. There's markets within markets within markets. Yeah. So it really is that drive market. So if you think about it, it's 3 hours of all capital cities. Places like Cairns, Uluru, Darwin, Kimberley's, those more remote destinations, they totally rely on aviation and therefore are much more vulnerable. And that's what all the evidence is. The one interesting thing that's coming out of COVIDtelligence, though, Alex, is we expected people to say, I just want to go for a weekend. They're actually saying, I want to go away for a week. I just want to go away
right now. But they can as well right now. They could go somewhere and they could work from home for a week somewhere else.
And I think that's going to be a huge battle for the tourism industry after this, is that so much of aviation relies on the business traveller. And they're actually going to be able to go, no, you have to travel? Well, let's Zoom it, you know? And so we've actually trained ourselves into this now. And so therefore business travel may not recover as much. And that will change the dynamic for aviation. Because as we all know, it's the front of the plane that makes the money.
Oh yeah, right. It's the front of the plane that makes the money. Like I didn't know that. But that makes sense, right?
Yeah. So cattle class pays the costs.
Yeah.
The front of the plane is where they make
the
money.
Profit. Yeah. Wow. And
I've got a conundrum for you later too, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, but we'll get to that in a second.
Okay, I'm going to write down conundrum so I remember it. Cool. 1 second, conundrum. So then international travel, like a lot of these smaller islands in the Pacific, that it's all kind of international travel based. Yeah. They're saying it's not at least until the end of the year, but like I think people will be more fearful of traveling overseas because they trust their government a bit more than they did before now, right? And especially for Australians, right? Like if you talk about Australians, I think Australians have, like, they've listened to the government, but the government's also executed, I think, pretty well comparatively to some other governments in the world. And so I think, you know, we're trust travel within the same country. International travel, I think, will have a lot more doubt on the efficacy of the health standards and the quality of all these things that, you know, before we would just accept it. You know, we'll go to Bali, it's fine, whatever. You know, what's the worst that can happen? We're going to get drunk a couple of days and we're going to have some hangovers a couple of days and the taxi drivers are going to try and scam us or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, but that's it. But now there's this extra thing. How do you think that's going to recover?
Yeah, great question. So here's a great little case study is that Singapore, being Singapore, and they know how to get stuff done, they've now released a certification program for their hotels on this, I think it's a 7-point cleaning system. Again, managing risk and giving assurance and confidence to consumers. And so they'll be rolling that out now, and that's an innovation. The rollout of international travel is going to be fascinating. And the real scenario is that it has to be reciprocal. So if you open your borders, they have to open their borders. But the problem is, who else are they opening up to?
Wow.
So New Zealand, Australia is a really easy solution. We can easily do that. New Zealand, we're the biggest trading partner, so they really will benefit a great deal, but it'll also be reciprocated. The next step is what happens next. And I think that actually, if you open up to New Zealand, you should open up to Pacific Islands. And I was just talking to the Cook Islands yesterday. Cook Islands has no COVID, no cases whatsoever. Really? Yeah. The biggest problem, though, with the Pacific Islands is medical attention and their hospital systems. That's what's worrying. But I think that if you open up New Zealand and Pacific Islands, that works. That can work very well, as long as those Pacific Islands don't open up to other countries. And so as soon as they do, that becomes problematic. And so the question then becomes, after New Zealand and the Pacific Islands, who's next? Singapore or South Korea or Japan, they all seem great, but it does depend on who they open up to. So for example, Singapore, between Malaysia and Indonesia, if they open up to Indonesia, I can't see us opening up to Singapore. Then it becomes the US, and then it becomes Europe. Africa, South America. Africa's scary right now. Yep. It's about to go through hell. Europe, they're in a very bad way, as we know, and the US is in a bad way as well. Canada's the interesting one. Could we open up to Canada without opening up to the US? Well, Canada's closed its borders to the US, so that could possibly happen. The cruise market's expecting to be operating out of Australia in October. But
just around Australia. So it just stays within Australian waters.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
It sounds really complex. Sounds really complex. Like these are the things that I think people don't think about. Like I know, including myself, is that it's lockdown. We're just trying to survive, trying to ensure that our businesses are kind of healthy as possible at the end of all this. But at kind of the government level and at the international trade level, wow, like the negotiations that would have to happen and who gets priority, and like we're just this small little island, like in terms of international trade, right? And so the nationalist side of things, you know what I mean? Like where everyone's like, no, let's basically, ensure our borders stay closed, could become stronger. I don't know right now, like I'm happy to travel overseas when I feel safe to do so, right? Yeah. And I think that's so complex. I didn't even think about how complex it was going to be.
Yeah.
So how long do you think it would take then for that to happen? Because they said you can travel at the end of the year, but when do you think people are going to feel comfortable to travel it?
Yeah, that's the other thing. There's three things, which is the legislative. Can you actually do it? Is it open? Second one is, can I afford to do it? And the third thing is, do I feel safe? So legislative, financial, and then personal safety. And I think those three interactions will depend on the market. If you're older, if you're over 60, you are not going to feel comfortable. And the problem is that baby boomer market has been fantastic for the travel industry.
Especially for the cruise liners, right? The cruise liners, because I went on a few cruises. I didn't know that I'd be the youngest person by a factor of like 2, so I think
it's interesting. So the cruise industry, though, I estimate has probably been set back about 10 years. There are, our research shows it. The latest data I have is, what's the first holiday you're going to do style-wise? Number one is they want to go bush or outback. but there's about 2% of people who want to go on a cruise as their first post-lockdown holiday.
Really?
Do not underestimate the crazy cruises. They are absolutely rusted on. They love it. And you know what? All they're thinking is absolutely brilliant. It's going to be cheaper and more affordable than ever.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, and that's the part which, like in conversations, like, and I'm no expert, right? Like in terms of the travel industry, but from a human behavior perspective, people want a good deal. I think like I've already started to look for holiday places I can book now, maybe pay a deposit now. And sure, I can get my deposit back, not pay the full amount up front or anything, but pay something I'm prepared to lose. Not too much, right? But to get a holiday like at a place where I'd have to work a bit harder for about 5 more years before I could go there. Now, maybe there's going to be a deal, you know, and, you know, like stuff like that could be happening right now.
That's right. And so the industry's faced with a real yield problem. Do they have to stimulate demand that much or not? And do they do long-term damage to their yield? And so the interesting thing that's to add another layer to that is there's a whole bunch of people who are not flying business class to Europe anymore. They can spend that money here. So they can actually really upgrade their Australian experience. And so that's going to be another layer of, there's going to be markets within markets. You know, the people that we usually go, we're going to go business class to Europe this year and spend that 3 weeks in the south of France. They don't get to do that. Do they go to one of the luxury lodges of Australia and have that amazing experience?
Wolgan Valley is one of those ones, right?
Wolgan Valley, El Questro, Lizard Island, up at like unbelievable. Qualia, I could go on. Sapphire. They are fantastic, incredible experiences that that kind of clientele will probably be going, why not?
Why not?
I've got this money back.
And so this comes back to then, like if I'm a travel marketer, especially just for, say for example, holiday destinations or for accommodation. Yeah. When's the right time to start? How do you stimulate it without cannibalizing the yield too much, right? You know, how do you be competitive and you know, but there's also the challenge of, I've got all these empty rooms. So every room that's empty, I've lost that night's money.
That's right. And so that's the...
How do you approach that? Like, apart from the COVIDtelligence software, which they should all have, because I think that will give them some insight. Fantastic. But apart from that, like, is there, like, I don't know, like, is there a percentage of spend you should be doing now? Is there something which you should be kind of trying to engage with? How would you do it?
If I were in that space, the one thing I would be doing is what we're doing. You know, it's just constant engagement that's meaningful, true to your brand, and not tone deaf. The second thing becomes, when do you start to actually put a retail offer out there for a date? And what lots of people are doing is giving that non-cancellation, you know, and my instinct is from July onwards. And so when do you actually put it out there though, without being tone deaf? It's getting closer and closer with all the good news. I'll give you a couple of data points that I think are worthwhile. Obviously our stuff at COVIDtelligence is one of them, but the New South Wales government will lose its power of New South Wales Police Force will lose its enforcement power on the 1st of July. So
is
you
that
will
until
not
1st
be
of July
fined.
still? Okay.
That's the current standing. ScoMo stopped talking about 6 months and started talking about months. We've now had the two adults plus children relaxation. That's fantastic and is leading towards that stage where I believe from July onwards, you'll start to see it. The race is on to be the right person to time when to come back in the market. And the race, I can tell you now, is it's not just yet.
It's not yet, is it? But it sounds like everyone's just there waiting. And when they hear the news, flood to social media.
It's a start. Well, it'll be interesting. I don't think social media will be the right.
Social media advertising, I mean, you know, put offers in their faces. Yeah.
But what I think is, think about it, it's a starter's gun. And that starter's gun will see social media flooded. And how do you get out of that noise? And I've got a lot of strong opinions on that. And I think if you're relying on social media to do all your hard work, don't get me wrong, you cannot ignore social media.
Yep.
But if you're relying on social media to do all your hard work, you are just like everybody else.
So what do you suggest instead? Because I want to hear some of those strong opinions,
Oh,
because
well, so
I'm into marketing on social media, obviously, right? But I'd love to understand kind of, your perspective on the full strategy approach.
This is not rocket science to most travel marketers. And if I'm teaching them to suck eggs, I apologize. But,
that's fine. Teach me to suck eggs. I don't mind.
You've got to have the first thing they're doing right now anyway is warming up their existing customer database. They've got to be doing that. And then they will be looking at media partnerships to be able to access new audiences. Now, Facebook and social is part of that new audience strategy, but the engagement rates that other people can deliver you when Facebook is flooded, how do you get attention? And so for me personally, I'd be looking at an email strategy, utilizing other email lists. And
this is now starting to go into the partnership space, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think I've ever received, so many people requesting a partnership, and B, so many companies saying yes to partnerships I've suggested, right? So because everyone tries to partner up the scale, yes. Right? It's hard to find someone exactly the same as your company, right? So like if you have to choose, you go up, in terms of the brand, the size of the database and so on.
Everybody wants to marry up.
Right. But what's your opinion on how to do partnerships effectively in the travel industry then, of sorts?
So I don't know about you, Alex, but my experience with the word partnership is I'm going to use a really bad analogy, but it's not anywhere near what people think it is, and they don't know how to do it. True partnerships, we've got skin in the game. When we win, you win. When you win, we win. And we'll all take the upside. Who's going to take the downside? Yeah. And how do we talk through that? And how do we be really honest about the greater benefit? Because someone always gets more benefit. Can we be honest about that, at least up front now, and talk about what that looks like? The best piece of advice I ever got about contracts was write a contract as if you hate each other and getting divorced. And then you'll actually envisage all the problems before they come, and at least have the tough conversations now. It's better having the tough conversation now than later. I think too many people will hear the word partnership and say, yep, partnership for me. What's in it for me? Yep, what's in it for them? And how does that actually look? And what's honest about that? The amount of times I've said, this is not a partnership, this is a supplier relationship. I'm comfortable with that. I just want to make sure that I'm now a supplier, not a partner.
Got it. And so then you said before to use email marketing and to share some lists or to kind of email each other's lists. What would you say is like a good partnership for like a hotel, for example, or for because they can't just be emailing each other's hotel lists, right? No. So how would you approach something like that? Because there's obviously all of the support around travel as well. Yeah. But I mean, yes, how would you be thinking about it? Or how would somebody think about it,
Well, the hoteliers are pretty good at it, and what they do is they often use their suppliers. So for example, Victoria Coffee is their coffee supplier. They've got a big consumer database anyway, or they've got contacts and that sort of stuff. So that's often how they'll utilize and leverage their relationships. If you're the guy that supplies, cleaning products or whatever, how can we make this work? Alcohol's a big one because they have contracts with alcohol suppliers, obviously. And so they utilize those existing relationships. And then they go further afield. And invariably, everyone overestimates their value. They all overestimate. I've got 200,000 amazingly rusted on, blah, 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 blah. And, it's really meaningful to you, but it's not that meaningful to somebody else.
Right.
So you've got to be prepared to hear the bad news. It's not as big and as valuable as you'd like, but you've got to then talk to further afield to organizations. Like, event management companies, they often have great relationships and they can actually help with that sort of stuff. And then going, externally to your clients, talking to them. One of the best things, and I've never shared this with Qualia, but I'll never forget, I was at Qualia, not big nutting myself, but I was there 6 weeks after it opened, 12 years ago, with my then girlfriend, who's now my wife, but that's another story. Mm-hmm. And I think that sealed the deal. And I was talking to some guests and they said, oh, this is amazing. I can't believe we're here. This is fantastic. And that they were actually the auditors of the Hamilton Island enterprises who were given a special thing. So all PwC were given this special closed loop deal. So often, you can use those sorts of things to get stuff.
That's smart. That's smart.
Right.
So you could partner up with organizations to offer them specific things as well. And then, sorry.
So Hamilton Island obviously is a large company because it's also part of the wine company that they own and all that sort of stuff. So using their contacts at their suppliers, that's how they went about it.
So for yourself then, how would you be approaching partnerships right now?
I am really reactive, by which I mean I'm just sitting there going, actually, no, that's not true. I've got a great partnership with Tourism Australia. I just had a meeting with them where we had to have a hard conversation about my skin in the game and their skin in the game, about a project we're doing with them in the US. And because we've always approached this from a partnership point of view, and I've always been very keen to illustrate what partnership means by taking, paying it forward, taking a hit first, and being like, that's okay, that's not great for us, but we'll do it. That conversation was a lot easier than it could have been, because it's honest and there's no one trying to leverage someone else. And that me putting skin on the game and saying, I will take a hit if that happens, but we need this to happen as for both of us.
Yeah, right.
And so being honest about the hit and all that sort of stuff. So my approach to partnerships is to be really reactive in that I want to understand where you're at. I want to understand your business. I'm going to be very transparent about what works for me and what doesn't. And then if that does work, then I'll talk to you about the scenarios. If we were going to get divorced, what would it look like?
So where it may seem it's just, hey, look, I'll email to my list and vice versa. Yeah. It's more a strategic partnership. It's to find a way to add value to each other, to put skin in the game, to be fair in the contribution of each party, right? And not, it's like half everything, and that's what it is, especially because I have a list of 700,000, you have a list of 20,000, like be open to like, if it's not fair, then how do you make it fair? But it's more a strategic partnership than it's just to share a database.
Yeah. And there becomes an element of trust that at future opportunities, you involve the partner and you value add. So for example, for my strategic partnerships, they're all getting COVIDtelligence free. And they're all getting it because that's what partnership looks like.
Yeah.
And I got them involved in the development of the product to make sure it delivered to them. The luckiest thing I've been able to do is to get my partners to design the product with me. And that I think has been very helpful.
Yeah, great. It's from the partnership perspective kind of makes sense for a lot of people right now, because you leverage each other's lists and you don't pay anything for it. Like that's assuming that's what you negotiate, right? Like and then there's a share of something that's combined in some form or another.
But there's got to be careful there, because so many people tempt themselves to bullshit, to up the value, to get the leverage. You will be found out.
Yeah.
And if you're going to bullshit and get found out later, why do it?
Yeah.
Sure, to give you small change now, but at the end of the day, that partnership will then end and you've lost an opportunity. So I think.
So think long term.
Yeah.
Think long term. And think what you can offer them. I think that's the big thing. I think everyone's thinking about themselves.
Yes.
And I think, like, I've received so many outreaches. Hey, let's do a partnership, like, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And
here's a partnership.
we've got this
you do
thing.
This for me.
Yeah, and we've got this thing, and it's like, yeah, cool, bang, archive, and mark as spam. It's like,
I'll never forget. Years ago, so I'm gonna have a bit of a bitch and a rant. Years ago, I had a meeting with TripAdvisor, and they sat in front of me and said, "You should take our reviews and put them on your site as a partnership." I said, "Cool, that sounds okay. So what are you going to do for me? We're giving you our reviews." No, but what are you going to do for me? Because I'm going to promote you and your brand and your reviews. But what are you going to do for me? And it was like I was speaking a foreign language. And that everything for me in partnership starts with, what can I do for you? How can I help you? Let's start with that as a base, and then talk about what you can do for me.
I tell you what's super interesting on that point is that like, it's really easy for the person who's receiving the what can somebody do for me to see if it's bullshit. Like, you're just saying what you want in a way that you think that it's for me, but it's not for me, right? It's actually thinking, what can you do for the other person? And if there's nothing that's going to be of interest to that party, it's probably not going to work anyway. So just save your time, save the potential relationship, because sometime in the future you might have something that they want as well. And I think that's what people don't think. They just think, I'll just try. And all you're doing is you're just hurting yourself, because like, you're not actually adding any value. So try to find a way to add value in that respect.
I mean, that's the old saying about all they can say is no. Yes, they can say no, and they can then think that you're not worth dealing with again. Yeah. And I've realized, God, Alex, I could tell you long stories about launching this business and how we fucked up so many things. But one of the biggest
we don't have that much time, unfortunately.
But one of the biggest things I came to realize too late, two things. One was, you get one chance to really make it work from the get-go. And after that, if you don't get that right, you're never going to get it 100% right. But every percentage point you don't get it right requires 3 times as much effort to get it right and get back. Yeah. And the second one, just in case people like it, was the best piece of advice I ever got and totally ignored for a startup, in case there's startups out there. Yep. You get your business plan, it looks amazing, is double the time, double the cost, and halve the revenue. It was said to me by a guy who's now a VC investor. And I ignored it. And then I came back to it 2 years after we launched and went, double the time, double the cost, halve the revenue. And that's exactly what happened.
It's a good way to think about things. And, I think, yes, it's good for startups, but it's good for any initiative that let you go for. Like, everything takes twice as long, no matter how fast you're moving. Like, and you assume that like it's going to go fast. And even if you do go fast, it takes twice as long. And if you go slow, 5 times as long to it not ever happening, you know? We've got about 10 minutes left. Sorry. So I just want to ask about the conundrum, which you had for me, because I don't know how big it's going to be. I just want to give us enough time.
Okay. So here's the conundrum. It's a marketing conundrum. It's a messaging conundrum. Right. So we're doing this project to stimulate engagement with domestic holidays, and we're trying to time it right. It originally started as a post-fire, bushfire recovery program, and it's in partnership with Tourism Australia with their 100 ways to holiday here this year. It's now evolved, right? It's still holiday here this year, but it's not bushfire, right? It's now COVID. And so when we first initiated this partnership and created the partnership, what I'd done is I said, we're going to reduce the price of the magazine to $3.95. That's cost. So I don't profit from this as a way to show that we're not profiteering from this. We are genuinely just care that we look after these businesses that have been totally damaged by bushfires, and that was globally, nationally, because they got lots of cancellations from international. So it wasn't just bushfire affected. And now that's evolved. So does the message become support industry in Australia, or should we appeal to the selfishness of Australians and say, you've been in lockdown, this is your way out?
I have a very strong opinion on that one.
Selfishness.
Focus on the people. Focus on what they want. Like it's what's that called? It's kind of the what's in it for me. I think everyone has done a fantastic job in staying home, in kind of flattening the curve, and it's a time to treat themselves for being actually responsive, for being responsible Australians, Like I've been pretty impressed at how a lot of the country was in lockdown even before it became law, and I think it's certainly about them now, but it's always been about them, supporting industries for business, and it's for that percentage where they have to give back, that's going to be good. I think it's a secondary benefit, support industry, but only when it can be linked to the people who work there. So maybe there's a campaign around the workers that can have some jobs. So have fun, treat yourself. And by the way,
you're doing good.
A couple of stories of the people whose lives are going to be affected by you having a great holiday that treats yourself, I think engaging on emotion is key right now. And I think that's what is lacking everywhere, that vulnerability.
I think we're going to end up at that whole, you've earned this. Australia's earned this. We're here to help. We're here to facilitate. We're not going to profit from it. Go for it. But it's an interesting, how things change. And quick one.
I
was talking to the guys at Tourism New Zealand, and I like their strategy of dealing with these things. And they've got a 3-tiered strategy, which is react, rethink, reimagine. So react to what you've got to do, rethink what you've been doing and how you do it, and then reimagine what your business and future looks like. And I think we're all doing that to some extent, but recognize it is very helpful.
I do think that there's a story arc. This is what they talk about in the movies, right? And I've been learning about this because there's a person on our team now that does kind of video production. So I'm kind of just learning all this kind of lingo now, right? There's going to be a story arc of the recovery of emotions of people. And so I think, in my opinion, the days of getting the one single message correct is gone. That single message will change every 2 weeks right now, right? If I think back to 6 weeks ago when everyone was in the middle of hell, right? That message is very different to today's message. And in a couple of weeks, that message again will change. In 6 weeks, it will change again. So I think the message story needs to evolve, and become a story.
I think we've got to also spend time on how receptive the audience is to you, to your message. In travel, I don't think people did enough of that. They just went, no, we've got to keep telling them to travel. No, just get out of the way. Let them deal with the problems they've got, the anxiety, the despair in some stages, teaching my kids at home. Let them deal with that. And then when they're ready, let them engage. It's an interesting one.
Quentin, Q, thanks so much for taking the time today.
Absolute pleasure. I hope I didn't teach too many people to suck eggs and bore anyone.
No, look, I learned a lot.
Thank you. I really appreciate your time, Alex. It's always lovely to speak with you, buddy.
And go to australiantraveller.com.au, right?
No, just .com. Just
.com. And Quentin Long at Australian Traveller.
Yeah, Q Long at Australian Traveller. Q Travels is most of my handle.
If you want to get the
COVIDtelligence
software, which I think you probably should get because you don't know what your customers are thinking. And if they tell you, it will give you so much more insight. Because this is the thing about surveys. It's only the people who like to fill surveys that will fill out the surveys. And they might not be the people who spend money with you, right?
Absolutely.
So that combination of analytics plus some information, I think is the key. So I think it's a fantastic idea.
Can I give you a quick case study on that? This is my favorite one.
Yeah.
61% of millennials will pay for additional value-added services. Jetstar how many people actually pay for their seat? I like, it's a lovely survey stat that tells people lots of interesting things and justifies things. The reality is different.
The reality is always different, and I think that's where like insight is so important. And now more than ever, especially for the travel industry, you need the real insight. And it's not going to be perfect because it can't be perfect, but as much information as possible can certainly help to make the right choices. Cool. Thanks so much, Q.
Thanks, mate. Love your work.
Fantastic, mate. See you later. Speak to you soon. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Growth Manifesto podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please head on over to iTunes and give us a 5-star rating. For more episodes, please visit growthmanifesto.com/podcast.